Come in, come in. Welcome back to the movie theater lobby, everyone. I'm Brandon.
And I'm that sweet, buttery popcorn bucket you might know as Princess Leia.
That is correct. Yeah, we got the buttery popcorn princess here. That means we are ready for another little chat here about movie trivia. Talking about a new movie, not a new, like a different.
A different movie.
Yeah, we rarely go into new movies. So Leia, this week we're talking about a movie that itself often references and talks about other movies.
Yeah,
right?
Heavily.
It's sort of a thing that the writer is relatively known for. Mm-hmm. In this movie particularly, classic martial arts movies tend to be of subject. But that's even more relevant because today, Leia, coincidentally, here at the movie theater lobby, we're running a reserved showing. We don't often do that too often. Mm-hmm. I just said often, twice, almost in a row.
You just love that word. That's fine. It's fine.
We don't usually do reserved showings here at the movie theater lobby, but we're doing a reserved showing of, and I was pretty excited about this. Hold on, let me look at the paper here just to make sure I got it right. Reserved showing of Street Fighter and Street Fighter, the Legend of Leia.
What?
This can't be right. Damn. I just realized I booked the reservation thinking it was the classic Sonny Chiba Street Fighter from 1974.
Oh, did you get the video game Street Fighter?
The reservation was for the 1994 Street Fighter based on the video game with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
It's an honest mistake, honestly.
Yeah,
so
I suppose.
Yeah.
But who would reserve a theater to watch that one, for God's sakes? And it's sequel / spin-off-ish, sort of even worse performing movie, The Legend of Chun-Li. Van Damme it.
Van Damme it, indeed.
Yeah, too late now. I guess payment was made and accepted. So shit, we got that to look forward to later.
All right. Well, I'm going to look forward to it because it's there and it's going to happen.
Positive attitude.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Yeah. Rather than sit through the torture just for the sake of the torture, we'll look at it positively.
Did you happen to know that Street Fighter, the 1974 version, was the first film to receive an X rating for violence in the U.S.?
No, I did not know that.
Fun fact.
That is a fun fact.
Yeah.
Wow. We're starting the trivia early here today.
You know, I figured everybody should know that because that's a very interesting fact.
I think you're right. That is very... Okay, cool. Well, Leia, without further ado then, what far better movie are we talking about today?
True Romance, baby.
If you gave me 1,000,000 years to ponder, I would never have guessed that True Romance and Detroit would ever go together.
So, for anybody who hasn't seen this movie, I assume probably a fair portion of our audience has.
Our audience?
Yeah. But for anyone who hasn't, we're going to get you sort of into the movie a little bit. So you kind of know what you're stepping into.
Mm-hmm.
True Romance, released in 1993. A drama, sort of... Dramedy, dark comedy, kind of criminal caper kind of deal. It begins in a bar. The movie Jailhouse Rock plays on a small TV near the ceiling, and a man sits there with a beer in hand, who we will soon come to know as Clarence, played by Christian Slater. He speaks at length about Elvis and the rockabilly style the king of rock and roll portrayed in the famous movie.
Mean, surly, nasty, rude. In that movie, he couldn't give a fuck about nothing.
Clarence's ideal personality, if he had the courage and means to be. Our aspiring Vince Everett, it's the name of Elvis from Jailhouse Rock.
Oh, gotcha.
I watched that hillbilly and I want to be him so bad.
Attempts to pick up a barfly, but he fails, proving that Vince, he is not. Next, a taxi pulls up outside of a theater showing a triple feature of
Street Fighter,
the movies I wish we were showing today. Not the 1994 one, followed by Return of Street Fighter and
Sister Street Fighter.
Right. A woman gets out of the cab and buys a ticket. This woman is named Alabama, played by Patricia Arquette. Alabama enters the darkened, dirty, mostly empty viewing room like a friggin' hurricane.
Your worst nightmare.
Oh boy. She commits so many theater faux pas that I would lose my shit. She sits directly behind Clarence, despite there being so many other empty seats. She dumps her popcorn on the man, following that, she lights up a cigarette and then proceeds to talk and chat and ask for a rundown of what she has missed in the movie so far.
You'd be so pissed.
I would be so pissed. Despite all this, Clarence takes it in stride, and after the movies, the pair seem to find commonality.
I mean, she's cute.
She is cute.
And she's friendly.
And friendly. More than friendly.
More than friendly.
Yeah, super friendly. In talking after the movie and interacting, they really do seem like they genuinely enjoy each other's company, despite having just met. And after the back-to-back movie marathon, the duo decide to get some pie and chat about the films they just saw.
Would you like to go get some pie with me?
I love some pie.
I just gotta say, Leia, in the scene where they're having pie and chatting, can Clarence possibly put any more sugar in that cup of coffee?
I actually didn't notice.
Holy shit.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to look at that next time.
Yeah. Alabama even commented.
Did she? I didn't even notice.
Yeah, he's just pouring.
You're going to have any coffee with that sugar? Is that what she says?
She's commenting about things that she likes, and then she makes a comment about sugar as he is pouring copious amounts of sugar into that cup.
And it can appreciate the finer things in life, like sugar.
They play the icebreaker convo game and get to know each other a little bit better, but the night doesn't end there just yet. Clarence decides to take Alabama to his workplace, a comic book store.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I got the keys, so I just come in, read comics, play music.
So I admit I'm a bit jealous. I've always wanted to work at a comic book store, but I've never lived near enough to one, nor been fortunate enough to find one seeking an employee at the time that I'm also looking for a job, nor have I ever been in a position to accept the wage that they would be offering because it probably wouldn't meet my needs.
You get paid a lot?
No, that's where the trouble comes into paradise.
So sadly, a comic book store employee I am not. But I digress. Once again, the scene changes. It seems our lovable loser has managed to get Alabama back to his place for late night comic book reading. Or was it sex?
I don't know. For some men, I don't think there's a difference.
You know what? I'd go for either. And I think you're right. In some cases, there's no difference. But thinking about it now, I believe it was sex.
Okay. Yeah.
So after that deed is done, Clarence wakes to find Alabama outside smoking and crying. Ooh, Alabama. I know, right? You just had sex and now crying about it? Not a good sign.
No, thank you.
Alabama reveals the reason why. She explains to Clarence that she was hired by his boss from the comic book store.
Lance.
That's him. He called the place where I work. He ordered a girl for you. He said he wanted you to get laid.
I gotta say, what a boss.
Yeah, right? Who does that?
The perks of that job are pretty intense.
Outweigh the wage.
Yeah, I'd say so. She was hired by the boss from the comic book store to find Clarence and fuck him on his birthday, which happens to be today.
Well, I go to the movies every year on my birthday.
But through the course of the night, she genuinely fell for him. She's been a call girl for hire for 4 days. Clarence is her third customer. And this is a serious complication. Despite the odd circumstance.
You're not mad?
Oh, man. Can't tell you, that was one of the best times I ever had.
How many times does he have that kind of a night?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
That is very unusual.
Big comic book nerd.
Comic book nerd, hanging out at a comic book store after hours.
Beautiful woman.
With a girl who seems to dig the comic books, loves kung fu movies. Right.
Yeah,
yes.
I would too.
So, in a whirlwind of emotion and lust, the two declare their love for each other and decide,
let's get married.
Why not? Yeah. That's a logical next step after meeting somebody just a few hours ago.
A call girl a few hours before.
Mm-hmm. So the next day, the newlyweds get tattoos and...
The obvious next thing.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
You get married, get tattoos.
And then talk about your pimp.
Yeah, so while they're getting tattoos, the two talk about Drexel, as you just mentioned, Alabama's former pimp.
He thinks he's still his current pimp, but
Admittedly, he doesn't know it yet.
Yeah.
So Drexel, a man we're about to meet, we find him sitting on a chair, all dreadlocked, scarred up face, having some salacious conversation, followed by murderous shenanigans and illicit purloining of goods that do not belong to him.
Those are a lot of big words.
I think so. They were kind of fun to string together.
Yeah, they were.
Goods that will become very central to our story very shortly. And of course, now that Drexel has found a place in the audience's hearts and minds, it seems Clarence cannot get that man that he has never met out of his. Speaking of minds, we do get a little bit more of an insight into Clarence's mind. Now we see Clarence speaking to an imaginary mentor, Elvis?
Elvis-like
quote unquote.
Mentor.
Right? In his bathroom. And the two are convinced, I should say, mentor Elvis. Melvis? Oh
boy.
Shit. Melvis convinces Clarence to go confront Drexel and kill him.
So can you live with it?
Live with what?
That son of a bitch walking around breathing the same air as you.
Yeah, so Clarence is just convincing himself to go kill Drexel.
Right.
Yeah, but it's Melvis.
By way of Melvis.
Yeah.
So, feeling unsettled by the man's mere existence, Clarence decides it's go time. Resolving to be the man that he envisions himself being, Clarence takes the one-sided fight, literally, to Drexel, who happens to be completely unaware of Clarence's existence.
Who the fuck are you?
And vendetta. Oh, by the way, Drexel is played by Gary Oldman.
Ugh.
Well, that makes us practically related.
So good.
Fantastic.
I think he's most
in that
people's
role.
favorite character in that film. Anyway, continue.
He's definitely he's definitely a highlight. I concur.
Yeah.
Now, rather than me and Leia explaining to you precisely how that confrontation goes, I'm just going to say that our underdog hound dog, Rockabilly Wannabilly, does get one over on Drexel, one way or another. Clarence also manages to purloin what was once previously purloined, and a cross-country journey filled with cops, Hollywood execs, drug dealers, mafiosos, cameos, and illegal dealios begins. And since that journey takes Clarence and Alabama out of the Midwest, which we're fairly familiar with, let's leave them on their merry way while we stay here and chat a bit.
Sounds good.
So Leia, now that we've got our friends here all kind of caught up to the world of Alabama and Clarence, what do you say we talk about some cast and crew as we usually do?
Yeah, sounds great. I think we should start talking about the actors, and then maybe we could talk about the writer and the director and kind of segue into a little bit of information about them.
Yeah, let's go that way. All right, so who are we going to talk about first?
I think we should talk about the main character, the main one.
The main?
Yeah, like the first one you see. Is he the first one you see?
He is the first one you see.
Christian Slater.
Yeah, let's start there. Goodest place as any.
Goodest place as any. He was a big fixture in the 90s.
He was.
Huge.
Yes.
I remember as a kid, I was so obsessed with him.
Most of the movies I know him from are from the 90s.
From the 90s. He did get his film debut playing Binks Davely in The Legend of Billie Jean in 1985. Yeah. And then he had a starring role in The Heathers in 1988.
Yep.
He was in your movie, The Wizard.
The Wizard, yep.
The Wizard, that's right. The Wizard.
Yeah, just singular.
Singular.
Yeah.
He was also Will Scarlet in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. How could we forget?
Right.
You know, we always talk about actors doing like animated voice. He did an animated voice for Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest.
Yes.
So
love that movie.
That's pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
I loved him. Loved him in Untamed Heart.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, loved that movie so much. It was so sad.
Yeah.
That came out the same year as True Romance. So
did it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
That was a big year for him.
I guess so.
True Romance and Untamed Heart, I think, he's pretty well known for.
That whole kind of mid-90s, he was really flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a few more mentions that I'll throw in there as well. Gleaming the Cube for all of for all of our folks on wheels kind of fans. Pump Up the Volume. Right?
Why'd you mention that one?
The little radio DJ action.
All right.
It's popular in the 90s.
Sure.
People in the 90s, people knew Pump Up the Volume. Aside from Pump Up the Volume, which Leia doesn't like, but everyone else in the 90s did. Very Bad Things. He did a really long stint on Archer, recently in Blink Twice, and how could anyone forget Anne Rice's masterpiece, Interview with the Vampire?
Yeah, he played Malloy, which was the guy that interviewed the vampire.
Interviewer, yeah.
Yeah. You know, he actually made $250,000 for the role of that film.
Okay.
He donated all of that money to all of River Phoenix's favorite charities, because River Phoenix had passed away, and River was actually supposed to be in the role of that before his death. So he went and donated all of his money that he made.
Yeah, and they were pretty good friends.
And they were pretty good friends, yeah. He was also asked to play Eric Draven in The Crow.
Right.
And he and River actually were both asked. They both turned it down which is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Because then, of course, Brandon Lee got the part and ended up dying because of it.
Yeah.
So if they had gotten those roles, it would have been...
Who knows if they would have died?
A completely different story.
Maybe Brandon Lee would most likely still be around.
Yeah, that's
but maybe
just
we'd be minus one of the... Well, we're already minus River Phoenix anyway.
We are. He would have died a completely different way.
But
I think this came out after he had passed.
I think it did,
already,
yeah. And honestly, those two would not have done it better than Brandon Lee did.
No.
They would not.
No.
I love River Phoenix. I think he was an amazing actor.
Yeah.
He would not have done that job better than Brandon Lee. There's no chance.
No, I agree. He was also, a couple more mentions, he was also in Bed of Roses, which I loved.
Oh, sure.
Because I was a romantic, when I was a kid. So romantic. Zoolander.
Oh, right.
He was also in Igor, which is another animated film. And speaking of animation, Brennan, one of our favorite animated television shows, Rick and Morty, he played Vance Maximum.
In that, what is it, like Avengers-like?
Avengers-like, yeah.
Yep.
He also did a Deadshot voice in the Suicide Squad animated video, Hell to Pay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's most recently in Blink Twice and Dexter, Original Sin. In Dexter, he plays Dexter's father, Harry Morgan.
Oh, wow.
So,
a young
I haven't
Harry
watched
Morgan.
it yet. I want to watch it.
Yeah,
I feel ashamed that I
point.
haven't watched it. But I think it'd be cool to see him in that role.
That'd be interesting.
He, like you said, he was friends with River Phoenix. He was part of that huge 90s drug scene, but he actually got sober in 2009.
Yeah.
So he didn't stay.
Been clean since.
Yeah, he didn't stay in that scene very long. Did you know he practices Kempo karate too?
I knew that he was into some sort of martial art, but I didn't know.
Kempo.
All right. Good for him.
Still into it.
Hey, that's
great.
If you can find something that keeps you busy and away from other addictions, then hell yeah.
You need a hobby.
Yeah. No, that's all I got for Christian Slater. And
you can't really find a lot of information about his personal life. He seems
fairly certain after his early misdeeds, he probably wanted to stay a bit more private.
Yeah.
I can understand, yeah. Who's next, Leia?
So let's talk about Patricia Arquette next.
All right.
Her feature film debut was a leading role in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
That's insane.
Which, we're big fans of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, so that's pretty cool. She was on The Outsiders and Tales from the Crypt TV shows. Ed Wood, Lost Highway.
Yes.
Amazing.
Lost Highway. Love that movie so much.
She was in a little-known film, I think for most people, not for us, but she was in Night Watch with Ewan McGregor.
Oh, right, yep.
I love that film.
Yeah.
I love everything Ewan McGregor does.
So. Typically do.
Yeah. She was in Little Nicky. Remember that?
Yeah.
Banger?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Was it in the early 2000s?
It was, I believe, early 2000s.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to remember it, but I do remember it.
You don't need to remember it.
Uh-huh.
She was on 130 episodes of the TV series Medium. I think that's what most people kind of more recently remember her in.
Might know her as.
I couldn't get into that show. I tried.
No.
I couldn't get into
it. Not my style, man.
It's too...
woo-woo?
Yeah. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I'm like, a Medium? No.
Yeah.
But she was in Law and Order.
Yeah, she was.
Special Victims Unit and CSI Crime Scene Investigation.
And then CSI Cyber even.
And Cyber as well. 31 episodes of Cyber. So she was really into that one.
Yeah, she got her character in CSI and then came back for a recurring role in CSI Cyber.
Yeah. She was also in an animated series. She was in Toy Story 4.
Yes.
So she did her part there.
Yeah.
She was also in a made-for-TV mini-series, or like a mini 4 or 5 part, I forget how many parts it is, but it's called The Act.
Okay.
And it's about Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
Oh, all right.
She plays Gypsy Rose's mom.
Oh, no kidding.
In there, yeah. I didn't even recognize her.
Wow.
But I'm a big true crime aficionado.
You are.
Love that kind of stuff.
Way more so than me. I just sort of skip everything true crime.
I love it.
I'm sure everyone's going to hate me for that now.
Despite loving it so much, I still don't watch Law and Order and CSI.
No.
You think I would.
Well, that's
too dramatic for me, I think.
That is fictionalized crime.
And I don't like fictionalized as
true
much.
Crime.
I do like true crime. And this is like it's almost like a documentary, but it's done dramatically and it's done so good.
Yeah.
So
one kind of quick little mention on her. A lot of people know the rest. Well, not the rest, but a lot of other of her family members. She was the first Arquette to win an Oscar.
Oh, was she really?
Yep.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. She won it for her role in the movie Boyhood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen that movie.
Yeah,
Have you?
I've seen parts of it.
Okay.
So when I worked at Best Buy, we used to take movies and put them in the break room and we would just play Blu-rays. And that was one that somebody had put in there. So I've kind of in and out of the break room, seen little bits here and there. Never watched the whole thing though.
Yeah, it sounded like they had kind of a rough start, the Arquette family.
Yeah.
Dad was an alcoholic. Mom was really abusive, violently abusive. So they kind of had a rough start. She attended Catholic school and wanted to be a nun.
Wow. Very different role in life.
Very different. But then at the age of 14, she ran away from home after she learned that her father had an affair.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So she settled with her sister, Rosanna Arquette, in Los Angeles, and the rest is history.
That's where it went.
That's where she got her start. She moved to Los Angeles and never looked back at all of that garbage.
Yeah. Got going on life early, I guess.
It actually quite surprises me how well all the Arquettes have done, considering
the background.
The background, yeah. So she played Alabama. There's other people that were considered for the role of Alabama.
Oh, really?
Most notably, the one that they wanted to put in that role was Drew Barrymore.
Oh, that would be
a different film.
Unconventional.
That was their first choice, and I think she just turned down the role.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Subsequently, though, Jennifer Jason Leigh turned down the role of Alabama. Because she actually did play a similar character in Miami Blues from 1990. And then she later worked with Tarantino on The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
We talked about her in the Hudsucker Proxy.
She did, yeah. So she actually got her time with Tarantino.
She did get her Tarantino time, and she was great in that movie.
Yeah, she was. I think she would have done great in this movie also.
Oh, yeah.
But
from what I've seen her in for the Hudsucker and for the Hateful Eight recently,
yeah, she would have pulled it off.
Yeah.
It would have been fine.
It would have been fine. But yeah, it would have been different. I think Patricia did a good job.
I think she did too. She's one where she doesn't ever really disappoint me in her roles.
No, she really doesn't. And I think for time purposes, we should mention a few more of the actors that are in the film.
Okay.
But maybe we just don't go into a huge amount of detail because, Brandon, there's a lot of famous names in this film.
Hey, yeah, there is. This is a movie that is just chock-a-block filled with cameos. You've got Gary Oldman, who of course plays Drexel, Christopher Walken, who plays the mob boss, Vincenzo Cocotti.
You always say that so much better than I could.
I always just do it wrong. Dennis Hopper, who plays Clifford Worley, who is Clarence's dad. Val Kilmer, who's our Melvis.
Hey,
baby. Then you've got Brad Pitt, who is Floyd, or the guy on the couch, of course. Bronson Pinchot, cousin Balky.
Yeah.
Samuel Jackson shows up a little bit. Michael Rappaport, who actually has a decently sized
He's got a pretty
role in this
big
film.
role in this film, yeah.
Saul Rubinek, who's very prolific on the screen here. James Gandolfini, who comes in as a madman. Very calm madman.
Yes, very calm madman. It's unnerving.
It is. It really is. Chris Penn, Tom Sizemore. So really just the list is unending, except I just ended it.
Yeah, there's a lot of huge names with very small roles. I mean, Christopher Walken has just a single scene.
Yeah.
And Samuel L. Jackson is on screen for maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah, not long at all.
Not very long at all.
If that covers our cast and crew.
Yeah.
Or not the crew, covers our cast.
If that covers our cast.
Let's talk about director-writer.
Yeah, let's do that.
All
I mean, the director's Tony Scott.
Mm-hmm.
He's Ridley Scott's brother, but let's not make that a thing because he is a standalone.
He's his own dude,
he is
sure.
His own dude for sure.
Super talented.
Prolific producer and director. He directed Top Gun, Days of Thunder.
Classic
Days of Thunder.
That is a D&D module if I ever heard one.
The Last Boy Scout, The Fan, Enemy of the State. He's really known for Domino, The Taking of Pelham 123. He does a lot of big action flicks.
Yeah, he likes his action sequences.
He last directed the film Unstoppable, which is another, big action film. The one film that should stick out in this list is the film that he had done that's preserved in the National Registry.
Oh, another one of those. So he, of course, directed Top Gun, which is in the film registry. He never made a feature film in his native England. Oh, no way.
So Ridley Scott is known for doing a lot of films.
Sure.
All over the place. But he actually never did a feature film in England, where he's from.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Just a U.S. kind of guy.
Just a U.S. kind of guy. And a lot of his actors are U.S. born.
Yeah, most of them are.
Whereas Ridley Scott's really well known for
his British
actors.
Yep.
He's also a very active man.
Yes.
He was a mountain climber. He ran almost daily.
Yeah, running, hiking.
There's even a piece of memorabilia in the film that was given to him by one of his climbing buddies. And this piece of memorabilia's name is Russell.
Is it a terrier?
No.
No.
It's a bong.
Oh.
It is the bong that Floyd is being using in the film.
Huh? Okay.
Yeah.
It's appropriate because it looks rather Floydish.
Looks rather Floydish. It's working. It's giving.
Yeah. I think Floyd was designed around that prop.
Yeah. He died in 2012. He didn't want to go on anymore. He was sick. He had, I think, cancer.
Mm-hmm.
He was struggling with that. He was actually out looking for filming locations with Tom Cruise for Top Gun 2 because he's supposed to direct that.
Oh, okay.
And he was chatting with his brother just moments before he had passed away. So this came as a big surprise to a lot of people that he had done what he did.
No one will say what the motivation was, if there was a motivation given.
Mm-hmm.
The Scott family's keeping quiet about that, which is totally fine. I think that's
in their realm of,
there's no reason anyone should need to know outside of them. That's their business.
It is sad though, because I think he had a lot more really great films to do.
Oh yeah, he was so artistic. I mean, even before he was a film director, he was a painter, and he was fairly prolific. He made a lot of art. He just wasn't able to make it a sustainable living. So I think that's all I've got for Tony Scott. There's other movies I can mention. I'm sure we'll see him again, so I don't think I'm going to take the time on that. We've got 2 writers, right?
I only have Quentin written down,
You only have Quentin?
but I know he was writing it with Avery at the time.
Well, let me mention Roger Avery real quick, because I can make that real brief.
I got more on that later anyway.
Okay.
So.
Roger Avery just did kind of the beginning of the screenplay. I'll let you get into the rest of that a little bit later on. But he partners with Tarantino quite a bit.
Yeah.
So a lot of his credits are very in line with Tarantino's credits. He helped with some additional dialogue on Reservoir Dogs. He is famous for writing Killing Zoe, additional dialogue for Pulp Fiction, Rules of Attraction. He wrote the screenplay.
I love that movie.
A little movie after my own passions, Silent Hill.
Definitely after your own passions.
Yeah. He also did the screenplay for Beowulf.
That was an interesting one.
It was interesting. It was not one of my favorites.
Not a good one, but interesting.
Yeah, interesting. And then Lucky Day, which I just mentioned because we had seen it recently. Not one of my most favorite films to watch, but Crispin Glover did great.
Yeah.
So
as he usually does.
As he typically does. So, okay, Roger Avery, we'll talk about him another time.
Yeah. I don't have too much on Quentin either because I feel like we're probably going to cover him extensively throughout the next few episodes. But in specific with this film, the first writer-director role he had was for Reservoir Dogs, which debuted at Sundance, which really kind of skyrocketed him to the top in terms of like writing and directing. And then he did True Romance. And then that was sandwiched between, so it's True Romance was then sandwiched between Reservoir Dogs and then Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like True Romance kind of got lost in the chaos a little bit because everybody remembers Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. But I don't think too many people remember True Romance.
Fewer people at least, yeah. Even though I will argue, okay, yes, Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction both have really outstanding dialogue. True Romance has some really good friggin' dialogue in it.
And you can hear Tarantino's voice.
Oh, yeah, from literally from the start.
Yeah, you can hear it clear as day.
The Elvis dialogue is Tarantino.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all I have on him. I have some more things throughout our little trivia section.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Do we need to do a rundown on any of his films, or do we just leave it at Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and True Romance for now? Because we will cover this man again.
We don't need to run down all
right.
of his films.
Yeah, we're good right there.
I don't know all of
Besides
his films,
that,
you got problems.
I'm sure everyone else knows the movies he's contributed to anyway. So, okay.
Lastly, I just want to discuss a little bit about the music.
Oh, please do.
Because
the composers and music and all that stuff.
The score was weird.
It was an unusual kind of score.
I liked it, but it was weird. It's done by Hans Zimmer, so it's not like it's done by anybody.
Yeah, not an obscure guy.
No, not at all. But it's based, and I'm going to try to get this right because it was kind of confusing, but I thought it was very interesting, okay? So it's based on Gassenhauer, which is a piece that was taken from Karl Orff's Schulwerk. Schulwerk is like a music teaching method.
Okay.
It's like a method of teaching kids how to play music or learn music. So the method combines music, movement, drama, and speech into lessons that are similar to a child's world of play. So it makes it more fun for them to learn.
Okay.
So it's just a different style for teaching. This theme, combined with the voiceover spoken by Arquette, was an homage to Terrence Malick's 1973 film Badlands, which is also kind of like a inspiration for the film. I just thought that was, because if you listen to the music, it sounds almost lackadaisical.
Kind of jaunty.
And jaunty, yeah. And you're like, hell am I listening to, and it almost doesn't seem like it goes with the film, but then like it does at the same time.
There's a point that I'm going to touch on a little bit later where the film is Clarence in this movie is almost an adolescent playing a hero. So I feel like that music is very poignant to that whole experience.
Agree. All right, so that's all I have on all that.
All right,
cast
perfect.
and crew stuff.
Great. Yeah, I'm buttoned up on that as well. So let's scoot right along into, usually we follow cast and crew with some acclaim, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Do we have legs?
We do, and the legs are a little shorter than, but I think it's because the opening weekend was so huge compared to how much it made over the course of its opening. It made 3.05 legs. But if you look at the opening weekend, it made $4 million opening weekend, but then only grossed just a little over 12 million.
Right.
So I think that's why the legs were just so.
Yeah, kind of fell a little bit short.
Yeah, it felt a little bit short.
Not every movie has to have big legs to be a good movie.
No, it doesn't.
So,
like I said, it's kind of not a very.
It's almost an arbitrary rating.
Yeah, it is.
I think
it's still fun to talk about.
Yeah, it still is. It enters into it could be useful statistically, but it's not really useful to determine a film's value.
No. Internationally, it did 362,000.
That ain't much.
Which is, I think, interesting because Tony Scott's from England.
Yeah.
So you would expect maybe a little bit, but no.
I think the rest of the world was not ready for Tarantino.
No. A lot of people weren't ready for Tarantino.
I mean, even if you look at Reservoir Dogs, that one didn't bring in F tons of money either.
It's such a cult classic.
Until Pulp Fiction is where he finally got his
big acclaim,
his big cash, his big bags of cash.
Yeah, his big bags of cash.
Well, and the film was generally positively reviewed too. So it's, you would think that with good word of mouth and good review all coming around, it would have performed a bit better. But, maybe we were talking about this during Hudsucker Proxy and Quiz Show. Man, there were some big movies coming out in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
So it may have just kind of got lost.
Big time for movies. Yeah. Mid-80s, and then I would say like the early to mid-90s were two really big film type era.
Throwing out classics in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. So this film did get a lot of nominations, but it only had one win.
Yeah. I didn't find much on its award record. So
yeah, it was mostly for some of the actors for certain roles, like Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, Saturn Award nominees, Christian Slater for actor, Patricia Arquette for actress. They separate those, and Quentin Tarantino for writer. They lost to Robert Downey Jr. in Heart and Souls. So, yeah, and Andy McDowell in Groundhog's Day. So that's Christian Slater lost to Robert. Patricia lost to Andy McDowell. And then Quentin Tarantino lost to Michael Crichton and David Coop for Jurassic Park.
Not entirely surprising.
Yeah.
The one that really surprises me is I love Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Did not love Heart and Souls.
No.
Well,
he lost to him in that.
Yeah.
I thought Christian Slater did a really well.
Oh, I think he did great.
Performance.
In this movie.
Really good performance. MTV Movie and TV Awards Best Kiss nominee.
Oh.
But lost to Indecent Proposal. Come on. Come on.
Yeah. Indecent Proposal, kind of all about kissing.
All about kissing. Kind of all about kissing.
Kind of involved in that one.
Yeah. It did win the 2020 Awards Felix Award for Best Actress and Best Original Screenplay. So it did win some awards, but not until much later.
Yeah.
2020 awards are 20 years after. So
Yeah, sometimes, you just got to wait another couple of decades to get the recognition that you're due.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure now they're able to right that wrong of Heart and Soul
right
getting that win. So
Agreed.
So, Leia, do we move on now, or do you have more claim to go on?
Oh, no, we should move on to inspiration, I think.
Let's do.
So we did start talking about some of the inspiration.
We did, yeah. Just kind of briefly. We wanted to save the meat for that for a little bit later on.
Yeah. So I'm sure you already knew this, but it's kind of an update of Terrence Malick's Badlands. So Martin Sheen was in it. He played Kit. Sissy Spacek was in it. She played Holly. But they kind of substituted those characters for Clarence in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Scott said, quote, "I didn't have any qualms for wanting to pay homage to that film." So specifically wanted to pay homage to that film.
Sure.
He also considers that movie in his top 5 favorite movies of all time.
Oh, well, I guess when you like a movie that much, you might as well try to bring your own interpretation to the screen.
Yeah. So the American outlaw scene, we have a history of the American outlaw scene. Bonnie and Clyde, Dillinger. That's kind of also some inspiration for this film.
Yep.
If you listen to Badlands at the beginning of that movie, Sissy Spacek does a voiceover during the music at the
kind
beginning.
Of opening credits scroll,
Yeah, and Patricia Arquette does the same thing, so that's kind of homage to that as well. Quentin Tarantino also chose the name Alabama as an homage to Pam Grier.
Oh, right.
Who was Alabama in Women in Cages. And in the original script even had Clarence mention that the name sounded like a Pam Grier character.
Yeah.
So
kind of blatantly calling it out there.
Yeah, kind of blatantly calling it out. I did look up Pam Grier. She is a beautiful woman.
Oh, she is. I love Pam Grier so much.
I didn't know who she was.
Oh, no?
I've heard her name. And I was like, who is that? And I looked her up and I'm like, man, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
She's beautiful.
And she is, she has done so many movies that I love. She's just such a good actor.
What has she done that I feel like I've seen something recently that she was in? Was she in
Jackie Brown?
Jackie Brown, that's what it was. Dang, I knew it.
I mean, she's done other things more recently than that as well, but that I figure you'd at least know her from that.
And Jackie Brown was a Tarantino film. Oh, weird. It all comes right back around in a circle.
Yeah.
Should we move on to some fun facts, Brandon?
Yeah, let's talk about that. There's way too much to talk about in this movie.
I would say there's probably more inspiration, but it's kind of peppered throughout the trivia. And I just don't want to take away from some of this fun trivia.
I've got more here where honestly, I could have probably done this whole episode just this segment.
Yeah, I agree.
There's just so much. I'm going to start off with something that's really not related to anything else.
Fabulous. I love it.
Just because I thought it was so strange because it's not something you hear happen in a movie a whole lot. In this movie, there's a phrase, rotten in Denmark, which, everyone knows from like Shakespeare plays, right?
Not everybody.
Hamlet.
Yes.
Sure.
You do, but not everybody. Yeah.
Very unusually, the phrase it's said twice in this one movie by 2 different characters.
Intentionally.
Most likely.
Tony Scott's probably intentionally put that in there. Not a Tony Scott.
Tarantino
probably intentionally put that in there.
Or the fact that he wrote a 500-page script, forgot that he wrote it so early in the film, and then again so late in the film.
Yeah.
It was said once by Clarence when he's talking to Alabama in the beginning of the movie.
I knew something must be rotten in Denmark. There was no way you could like me that much.
And a second time when the 2 cops are talking to their captain when they're talking about interrogating Elliot.
You're gonna work on the guy, right? Now we know something's rotten in Denmark because this guy's fucking stupid.
So when you say it, of course, you know that phrase.
Right.
The funny part is that most of us don't, which is why it's weird in the film that 2 different people would be saying it. Right?
Haven't you ever heard the phrase, something's rotten in Denmark?
No.
Really?
Never. I've never.
Wow. I'm fairly certain it was from Hamlet.
You're probably not wrong, but you're also kind of like weirdly like remember this stuff. I don't remember this stuff.
Okay. I got my one really not related to anything fact.
I love it.
That I was really excited to bring up. At least I had fun with that one.
Christian Slater's favorite song is A Little Less Conversation by Elvis Presley.
I could see that.
That's just a random fact.
As much as Clarence emulates, or I should say idolizes, Elvis in this movie, I could see Christian Slater being an Elvis guy.
Yeah, it sounds like he actually is a pretty big Elvis guy.
He's got that feel to him. All right, well, check out this. I'm just going to keep throwing out some non sequitur connected to really nothing facts for
Those are so fun.
The 2 cops in this movie, 2 featured cops, they're played by Tom Sizemore and Chris Penn. Chris Penn plays Nicky Dimes. Tom Sizemore plays Cody Nicholson.
Oh, Nickels and Dimes.
Nickels and Dimes.
Wow, I didn't know. I guess I didn't ever
Isn't
notice
that weird?
Yeah, that is
kind of funny.
No, yeah, I'm sure it's intentional.
It probably is. Knowing Tarantino, that's absolutely intentional.
Absolutely. So Tony Scott actually gave Patricia Arquette something really interesting. So there's a Cadillac in the film.
There is
a purple Cadillac.
Yeah.
And when the movie was over, he actually gave it to Patricia Arquette because she had this Ford Futura that kept breaking down. And he's like, you can just have this Cadillac. And he just gave her the Cadillac.
How very kind, man.
Right?
That's not bad. He probably got to the point where he was like, hey,
this is ridiculous.
Having a hard time getting to set. Let's solve this for you. Have this car. All right. Well, since we're doing, again, kind of dueling non sequitur facts on this thing.
What do you got?
So check this out.
And I'll give you what I got. So, and you give me what you got.
Clarence is seen wearing sunglasses pretty often in this movie. Those sunglasses, you can find those again in the movie Kill Bill as being worn by Buck, which then get taken by the bride after she wakes up from her coma.
Yeah, and I did actually look that up to see what they look like. And I'm like, oh, they are the same sunglasses. Same. Exactly the same.
I thought that was pretty neat.
Brad Pitt improvised most of his lines for this movie. But like, there's a scene where he's giving directions to one of the hotels, and he said he imagined himself on a game show. And how would you answer the questions if you were on a game show? And he said, that's how I was answering the questions, which is why it sounded so like...
So kind of disjointed
and awkward because he was high. So he was trying to think.
Go down Beechwood and drive a while, and then you're gonna turn right, okay?
So we'll take a little Brad Pitt improvisation and we'll up it and say Gary Oldman invited his grandmother to the set.
She got to the set, huh?
She got to the set.
Was she hard on him?
He would solicit her for her opinion on his performance.
Oh, was she an actor?
His grandmother didn't seem to really be an actor of any sort, but he just
really valued her opinion.
Really wanted her opinion. So
we had briefly mentioned Chris Penn, Tom Sizemore, and Bronson Pinchot. I have to also mention, since we were talking about improvising our lines, there's a scene where Nikki, who's played by Chris Penn, and Cody, who's played by Tom Sizemore, are interrogating Elliot, who's played by Bronson, and they actually improvise that entire scene, which I thought, wow, it was really good.
Yeah.
Bronson Pinchot actually improvised the scene where he got cocaine all over his face and he was caught by the cop, too. He must be really good at improvising because...
He also improvised a line where they're talking to his boss, played by Saul.
Over a payphone.
Saul Rubinek, over a payphone. Saul Rubinek talking to him genuinely on the other side of the other end of the line. The connection was not super great. So there's a time when Saul Rubinek, his character, says, who the fuck is Dick? Because Dick is a guy who's setting up the cocaine, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Bronson Pinchot actually misheard the line.
He's like, huh?
You want me to suck his dick?
You want me to suck his dick? And he definitely seems to be a guy who likes to improvise.
Yeah, it's comedy gold.
Uh-huh.
Oh, who the fuck is Dick?
So we're talking about Saul Rubinek. We've also talked about, this is going to make sense in a second.
Okay. I tend to ramble, I get it.
I have to get there. Okay,
yeah,
so
I know that path.
We were discussing Joel Silver before a few times. We talked about him in Die Hard and Hudsucker Proxy and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Interestingly, Tony Scott and Joel had worked on The Last Boy Scout together. And Scott admits he hated working with Joel. And he really had a lot of trouble working with Bruce Willis. Both of them had a problem working with Bruce Willis. So as kind of like a sort of jab at Joel, like a joke, Scott wanted the character of Lee Donowitz, which is Saul Rubinek's character, to be portrayed kind of like a portrayal of the producer Joe Silver. So when Scott told Rubinek he'd gotten Joe exactly right, he'd gotten it right, during his audition, Rubinek's like, I don't have any idea who Joe Silver is.
Right. Yeah.
So he played him to a T.
Even though he didn't know.
Even though he had no idea who he was. Scott was later quoted saying, the Hollywood satire is affectionate, but Joel didn't talk to me for a long time after that.
I can understand why, especially knowing that Saul didn't know who Joel Silver was, and he was probably just trying to do his best scumbag Hollywood producer. If that is the stereotype that fits Joel Silver, then yeah, if I were Joel Silver, I'd probably be a little pissed too.
Yeah. There's another actor who actually got some of his inspiration from other sources, Gary Oldman. He based Drexel on the reggae singer actor Willie Oneblood. He also appeared with Willie Oneblood in Leon the Professional.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's part of where he got some of their inspiration from. He also was in his trailer. He was trying to come up with some inspiration. Trying to find the character. And he said he overheard a guy talking outside his trailer. And he's like, shit, that's the voice I need. That's it right there. Yeah. It's just some guy talking outside of his trailer.
Yep.
Brought him into his trailer and he said, hey, can I record your voice? And then Gary Oldman said he used that recording and just put it in his ears all the time.
Yeah.
and drew from that inspiration to get the voice of Drexel.
You've already given up your shit. I'm still a mystery to you.
I think that's super cool.
And he asked the guy to read the dialogue that Drexel was supposed to say, and the guy had said, it's good, but it don't fly. He said, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
So then Gary Oldman asked him,
well how would you say it?
And then, he kind of gave it just to give the whole thing a little more, I guess you could say, quote unquote, authenticity.
You must have thought it was White Boy Day. It ain't White Boy Day, is it?
Yeah, I thought that was some really cool inspiration for that character. And if you have never seen this movie, but you've only seen Leon the Professional, when you see this movie, you will know exactly who Willie Oneblood is in Leon the Professional. Because, yes.
On the flip side, you wouldn't right away realize that Gary Oldman's the same person.
Right.
Because he's a different person.
Yeah, he's very different in this movie.
And I think a lot of actors have said that too. He's a different person in every role, and people don't recognize him. Hannibal is a prime example.
Oh, yeah, you would never know.
You would never know he was in that film. And then they didn't credit him, so, you really don't know.
So that extra sucks.
Yeah, so that extra sucks.
Well, speaking of uncredited, we had looked at the credits and seen Jack Black's name pop up, and we were like,
why would his name pop up here?
Why is he associated with this movie?
He must have been friends with somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it turns out on the Blu-ray version, there's deleted scenes. Jack Black actually played an usher in the theater from the opening of the film.
Totally uncredited.
The scene was deleted. It was never used in the full movie.
Yeah.
So that is where he came in there. I got to take just a real quick step back to Willie Oneblood, because he also is associated to another movie we've already covered.
Willie Oneblood is?
Yes. Do you want to take a guess, or do you want me to tell you?
Another movie that we've already covered?
Uh-huh.
Who?
He's associated musically. He was not in...
Musically?
Yeah. One of our first three.
I don't know.
Don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. Dumb and Dumber.
He was?
He contributed one of his songs was used in Dumb and Dumber, a song called Whiny Whiny, What Really Drives Me Crazy. A small snippet
Whiny Whiny.
Yeah, he's a fairly accomplished reggae musician.
One of those well-known, not so well-known type of people?
I think he's known within the reggae community.
Yeah.
Probably not so much outside
clearly
of.
Acting community knows him too. Well, let's get a little more serious.
Well, we can try.
Let's talk about, there's a scene with Dennis Hopper's character. He plays Clifford Worley, which is Clarence's dad. And Chris Walken's character, Christopher Walken's character.
Ron Walken.
Vincenzo, how did you say it?
Vincenzo Cocchetti.
So there's a scene in it with those two in it. It's, I think, the only scene with those two.
Yeah. In fact, it's the only scene with Christopher Walken in it entirely.
Yeah. It's about Sicilians. Mm-hmm. And Dennis Hopper tells a story about how Sicilians are actually Black descendants. And Tarantino said it was a tale he had actually heard from a roommate of his, a Black roommate of his. Mm-hmm. Tarantino actually felt that scene was too good. I mean, he's tooting his own horn here.
Sure, yeah.
It was too good. He said he wasn't a fan of Christopher Walken's You're a Cantaloupe improvisation.
Oh, yeah.
Because he improvised that one, yeah. He said that he did like it, though, because it was the first time you can actually stop and enjoy the brilliance of Scott Walken and Dennis Hopper.
Right.
We can just finally step back and be like, wow, that scene was...
The whole scene came together.
Yeah. Tarantino actually recommends that you watch the movie by Jack Cardiff, The Long Ships from 1964.
Okay.
If you're interested in the history of Moors and the Sicilians.
Huh.
Because it actually goes into all of that detail.
Interesting.
Yeah. That scene, when you're watching it, it almost makes you feel uncomfortable because it's very racist.
It's very peppered with...
The N-word.
The N-word,
Lots of N-word.
Yes.
Yeah, it's icky. So this film isn't directed by Tarantino. It's written by him.
Right.
But it's actually still considered part of the Tarantino universe.
It is.
Which I think, I didn't know that, but I thought it was a very interesting fact. Tarantino confirmed that Lee Donowitz,
the producer,
the Hollywood director and coke dealer,
yeah, there you go,
is actually the grandson of Sergeant Donnie Donowitz from Inglourious Basterds, which is another film that he actually did direct. Mm-hmm. Another bit of evidence is when Mr. White in Reservoir Dogs mentions working with a girl named Alabama.
Yeah, isn't that something?
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool the way that his movies all sort of come together.
They all come together. This was the first film, even though Reservoir Dogs came out before. This is the first film where everything got its beginning.
Yep.
Really,
because this
truly.
was the first one he had written.
Yes. And when he wrote it, it actually was written in 2 parts almost.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about the other writer, Robert Avery.
Yep.
He originally did the screenplay, and it was 50 pages, and it was done, I've read somewhere 87, I've read somewhere 88.
Yeah, right.
Regardless, that's how long ago that this was started. It was titled The Open Road, and the original plot was an odd couple relationship between an uptight businessman and an out-of-control hitchhiker who traveled to a hellish Midwestern town together.
Mm-hmm.
Avery was really having a hard time finishing it, so he gave it to his coworker, Quentin. Just, casually,
just
as
casually,
you do.
Handed it around.
To Quentin, and to see what he could do with it. And Quentin came back with 500 handwritten pages.
That is
500.
intense.
The guy went on a binge.
Yeah, you just started writing and couldn't stop.
Nuts. Roger then typed and edited it with Quentin, helping kind of further the story elements. When it was done, it was basically Natural Born Killers and True Romance kind of all in one giant film.
Yeah, which would have been insane.
Which would have been too much. It would have to been a 2-parter. Because it was so long, they actually cut it, and that's when they cut it into 2 separate films. So that's how we got Natural Born Killers and
True Romance.
True Romance, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yet Reservoir Dogs came out before both of them.
It still did, yeah. It was just easier to produce and make Reservoir Dogs than it was this movie.
Yeah.
But I will say, there's still one other connection, minor as it is. There's a quote used in this movie by Drexel. He is inviting Clarence to sit down and have some food. He says, grab an egg roll. He said, we got everything from a diddle-eyed Joe to a damned if I know.
We got this so-far egg roll. We got everything here from a diddle-eyed Joe to damned if I know.
That same statement also shows up in Reservoir Dogs when Holdaway says to Mr. Orange, I didn't write down the actual quote, but
good story, bro.
When he says, diddle-eyed Joe to damned if I know.
Yeah. So it shows up again, which who would say that again?
Yeah.
If not in the same universe.
Right? It's just got to be in the old Tarantino verse.
So Tony Scott said the screenplay for this film was one of the best he had ever had, all thanks to Quentin Tarantino. He said he does admit to changing the ending, and I'm not going to tell you what he changed.
Okay, yeah,
we'll put that in the
get in that in just a little bit here.
Section. But Quentin actually met Scott through Scott's assistant, who was friends with Quentin at the time. And Scott was presented with both True Romance and Reservoir Dogs. And Tony Scott said he wanted to direct both, but Tarantino actually said he wanted to retain the rights for Reservoir Dogs because he wanted that to be his directorial
he wanted
debut.
That to be his.
He wanted it to be his. So the original screenplay was an amalgamation of bits and pieces of Reservoir Dogs, Natural Born Killers, and Pulp Fiction, like we had spoken. Mostly Natural Born Killers and True Romance. You can hear his voice in all those movies.
Yeah,
and
you absolutely can.
It's crazy. Like, you know it's a Tarantino film.
Yeah, just from the dialogue alone, you know the feel.
Most of Tarantino's films are all over the place.
They are.
They're not in order, and that kind of what makes the movies work because of the way they're written. Because he's just so chaotic when he writes. I don't think they'd be the same movies if they were in a linear fashion.
Truth.
But one of the reasons that Tony Scott changed it was because he wanted the film to be linear and not be all over the place and chaotic and crazy.
It also wasn't a storytelling style that you saw a lot in that time.
No, I think people didn't like that at first. The non-linear. Yeah. So originally, it started with Clarence talking about Elvis, and then the next scene was Drexel killing his cronies, and then the third scene was Clarence in Alabama at Clarence's father's house, so it was kind of like all over the place, and then you get to learn where he got the coke. Scott wanted it to be linear so that you could focus more on the protagonists and their love story and all of the crazy stuff that happened around it. Unlike Oliver Stone's version of Natural Born Killers, which Tarantino still hates to this day.
Oh.
Believe it or not.
I didn't know he holds an animosity
He doesn't like it.
Oh.
Tarantino felt that Scott breathed cinematic life into his script and opened the scenes. He often gets accused of letting Tony Scott make his scripts too pretty and glossed up, but Tarantino's quoted saying that's what makes it work so well. And the casting and performances he got. Tarantino really loves working with Tony Scott.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I just think that's really neat because I think most writers don't appreciate when somebody pulls their work apart.
And then, reconstructs
it.
Yeah.
But I think he appreciated the fact that Tony Scott moved stuff around, but he didn't change the dialogue. I mean, it was pretty much, besides the ending, it was verbatim.
Yeah.
It was just done in a chronological.
Yeah, just more linear.
More linear. And he I think he thinks that's why it worked so well.
I think it's fine that this movie went linear rather than the typical Tarantino jump about.
Yeah. There's a scene in this movie where Virgil beats the tar out of Alabama.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I thought the scene was interesting for a couple of different reasons. The first reason was Alabama has this instinct, this survival instinct.
Yeah, she really does.
That she turns on. So she sees him and you can see the fear in her. She suddenly just turns it around and turns on that sweet Southern, feel vibe where she's using her sex appeal and her sweetness and her kindness.
She tries to play the demure.
Yeah, and stupid. Oh, I want to have Coke, but there's Pepsi in the machine down the hall.
We don't have any Coke, but there's a Pepsi machine down the hall.
That's her little survival instinct. And then James Gandolfini comes off as having this kind of boyish charm, turn around and he's very and then he tells a story about how he got into it and how basically telling her what he's going to do to her next. And it explodes into this hurricane. It goes from this very sweet and innocent to this. That scene took 2 days to shoot.
This big burst of violence.
Yeah, because it was so intricate and they did so much work to make it what it was. It was heavily trimmed by the MPAA.
Yeah.
Tarantino said he recalls how they were actually less concerned about her being beaten.
Yeah.
And actually more concerned about how she was fighting back.
How vicious she was in return.
Because she was too animalistic.
Yeah.
That was icky to read.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry.
Really?
The MPAA can go fuck themselves.
Right?
Because
you're less concerned about the actual violence to women and more about how she's fighting back.
I think the concern about a woman being beaten should be their primary concern.
Right? Absolutely. I thought the same thing. I was like, that is...
Yeah. Those assholes in their suits can go shove it up their ass.
Speaking of suits, Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, another guy that can go shove everything up his ass. Fuck that guy altogether.
He was actually the original producer, and he thought Christian Slater was too good looking to play Clarence. So when he told Warner Brothers that he would rather have someone like Steve Buscemi play the part, Warner Brothers immediately fired him.
Yeah, good.
But I guess Harvey later approached Quentin Tarantino and told him that they're going to be partners and to not associate with Warner Brothers after this film.
Yeah. Fortunately, that jackass had a large pull in Hollywood.
Yeah. We had talked about the Coen brothers for the Hudsucker Proxy.
We did.
Their first film was called Blood Simple, which we also talked about. They actually financed that film by finding doctors and dentists and things like that that were interested in investing in their film.
Unconventional sources.
Yeah. Tarantino was actually trying to go the same route.
Yeah, he was inspired by their way of working.
Yeah, so... And this was back in the late 80s when he was kind of coming up with the idea. He spent 5 years trying to find anybody. And he even said that he would have sold it at a huge bargain.
Right.
Huge. Just to prove to himself he was a legit writer.
Yeah.
Which, aw.
Yeah. But knowing what his future is.
Yeah. But it's just, it is incredible that he had to try that hard to sell his writing. And now you'd have to pay him.
Oh, yeah. You would not get
so much money for one of his scripts.
You would not get a script for a bargain.
No. If I could turn back time.
Oh, man. And if I had anything more than probably $5 back in the late 80s.
Yeah, I probably would have taken $5. So Tarantino and the Scotts are actually intertwined in a kind of neat way, too.
Okay, how so?
Tony Scott's brother, Ridley, directed Thelma and Louise. That was Brad Pitt's breakthrough role.
Right.
And also featured Harvey Keitel and Michael Madsen, who appeared in Quentin Tarantino's first film, Reservoir Dogs.
And a lot of his other films as well, but there as his debut, absolutely.
Lastly.
Oh, Leia's rounding it out.
There's a scene at the beginning in the comic book store where Clarence is showing Alabama a Nick Fury comic book.
Right.
This film also features Samuel L. Jackson in a single scene, who would later go on to play Fury in the Marvel comic book universe.
Yes.
What? Mind blown. Who would have totally predicted that?
In the Marvel comic books Ultimate Universe, Nick Fury, in the standard Marvel universe, Nick Fury was an old white guy.
Yeah.
In the Ultimate Marvel Universe comic books, the creator of that line at that time had explicitly based that Ultimate Nick Fury on Samuel L. Jackson before Samuel L. Jackson was ever cast to play Nick Fury.
Yeah. Of all the comic books that he could have showed her, though.
The funny thing is, he talked about the Nick Fury story, he did not show her the Nick Fury comic book. It was a different comic book.
Okay.
But he told her the story of, and he was pointing at the comic book like he was telling her. Like he was telling her
about it, yeah. Like nobody would, like you comic book nerds wouldn't notice or something.
A little mistake, but whatever.
You noticed, though. You're like, that's not Nick Fury in that one.
That's not
Couldn't
right.
be. All right, should we go on to the spoilers?
Yeah, let's go to spoilers. And if you don't mind.
I don't mind. I don't even know what you're going to ask, but I don't mind.
If you don't mind, I'll start out the spoilers because it's really the only little bit I've got.
All right.
And then I'll leave the rest to you.
Okay.
But before we get into that, let's give those who need it the chance to get the fuck out.
Well, you don't have to. Don't be so mean.
The frig word was used so much in this movie.
It's true. You're having a hard time with it,
I just can't get myself out of it.
Well, it's like a Tarantino written movie or something.
Something like that. Who knows? So get the frig out. Get the F out.
I think it still implies the same thing, but I think they get the point.
Okay.
You should leave if you don't want to hear what we're going to say.
Show them the fucking door.
Okay.
Okay. Spoilers incoming. For anybody who needs the chance to leave, this is your opportunity.
Officer Dimes?
What?
This has nothing to do with me anymore, right? Okay. So I'm just gonna leave. And you guys just settle this by yourselves, all right?
All right, they're gone.
There we go. Mine isn't really even so much of a spoiler, but I think it'll lead in well to yours. So I kind of saved it just for this.
Okay.
But you're going to have to give me a little time because it's sort of a Brandon ramble.
Oh boy.
Here we go. This kind of would even fit better into the inspiration section, but only internally. Hold on.
Okay,
we're
getting there. Yep.
So
I'll let you cook.
A lot
the
of
kids are saying.
There we go. A lot of the opening movie is set establishing Clarence's frame of mind. The very first sequence that we mentioned was him in a bar talking about Elvis, right?
Jailhouse Rock, he was everything Rockabilly's about. No, I mean, he is Rockabilly.
And you'd be thinking to yourself, what the hell does this sequence of this guy talking about Elvis at length have to do with a goddamn thing? We never see this woman again. He fails to pick her up. He tries to pick her up and take her to a movie, and not like pick her up like grab her, but, ask her on a date. Fails at that.
He's not strong enough, guys.
He's not strong. He's not smooth. None of that. In that sequence, he's talking about how Elvis in Jailhouse Rock, he embodies rockabilly. He's mean, he's surly, he's nasty, and he's rude.
In that movie, he couldn't give a fuck about nothing. Just rocking and rolling, living fast, dying young, leaving a good-looking corpse,
Which he does mention again. You hear him when he's talking to Alabama. So this must be a speech he's
practiced
in
front of the mirror
to try to pick
with
up women.
The mentor.
He then goes on to mention, I watched that hillbilly and I want to be him so bad. So if you think about it, when he's showing Alabama kind of his life after they watch the movies together in the theater,
his glorious comic book nerd
you're
life.
seeing him. He's an average guy. He's working at a comic book store. She asked him if he's making a lot of money. He said, no, that's where the trouble in paradise is. So he's not making money. He lives alone in an apartment.
Small apartment.
He says that he often lets himself into the comic book store after hours so he can sit there and read comic books and listen to music, kind of implying he doesn't have a whole lot of friends. He's just kind of this lonesome loser, which I hate to say because it's the nerd life. I love the nerd life. So
he's okay with it, I think, for the most part.
He seems pretty happy with it. But he talks about how he wants to be this badass.
Yeah.
So you're getting sort of an idea of who he would be if he could.
And what his mental state is.
Another sequence when they're in the theater and Alabama's asking him, hey, what did I miss? And then she says, oh, he points up to Sonny Chiba on the screen because the guy dressed in black, and she goes, oh, is he supposed to be the good guy? And he says,
well, he ain't so much a good guy as he's just a bad motherfucker. I mean.
So he has this obsession with bad dudes, tough guys, right? Guys that are very much the opposite of who he is in real life. And as much as he seems happy with his life, he just seems to be just repeating days. So when he finally gets the motivation to be this guy, when he gets offended that Drexel even exists, that's when suddenly Clarence switches. Clarence is not Clarence anymore. Clarence is now the rockabilly badass. So I just thought it was kind of interesting the way that you see in the opening of the film, you see exactly Clarence is telling you who he's going to be for the rest of the film. Like I mentioned earlier, he's an adolescent pretending to be an action hero, a Billy badass tough guy. And
falling into the luck that he needs to get himself there, where everybody around him is dying.
Yeah, well, he's bringing misfortune upon everyone else who gets associated with him.
His dad killed. I mean, everybody's dying around him. That scene at the end, everybody's dying.
That's when we were watching the ending, I said, all this because two people met.
That is interesting that you bring that up because Tarantino's actually really good at writing characters that aren't necessarily good or or evil.
Yeah.
They're just characters. Like even in Reservoir Dogs, these people aren't what you would consider good people.
No, none of them are.
But they all have personalities. They're all people, and they're just doing a job. And he's just really good, even in Pulp Fiction. You know, a lot of those people aren't people I'd want to associate with, but they're people and they're likable.
And you can find them being good people to people outside of their nefarious acts. I mean, hell, even in Reservoir Dogs, Mr. White takes care of Mr. Orange for almost the whole movie.
Yeah, they're not good. They're not evil. He's really just awesome at writing characters like that. That's one of the reasons Tony Scott didn't want to kill the characters at the end. So that was one of the things he changed. Tarantino wanted the characters to die at the end because that's just how Tarantino writes. He wants you to fall in love with the character and then be sad
take them away.
And then take them away and be sad they're gone. That was one of the reasons that Tony Scott didn't kill the characters, is because he had gotten so invested in these characters and how much he loved them, even though they weren't good people.
Yeah.
Alabama is probably one of the nicest people in the whole film. Everything that happened to her was because of
Clarence.
Clarence, yeah, it was because of Clarence, which I remember even saying to you, I'm like, so sad that she's got to like deal with this because of him. She's like the only one that's super sweet throughout the entire film, except at the end, but she did it because she thought Clarence had gotten shot and died. But you get so attached to these characters, even though they're not good characters. I mean, Clarence turned out to be a
raging sociopath.
I mean, he's doing everything because he feels it's the right thing to do.
To do for Alabama.
Even though she didn't ask him to do it. But you end up being so invested in these characters. And Tony Scott was like, I don't want to kill these characters. I can't kill these characters. So Tarantino said this is the closest thing he ever came to a Mexican standoff, was about the ending of the film. He said, Tony, don't change the ending, not for commercial bullshit reasons. You're the man that made Revenge, and I loved Revenge so much. And she dies in the end of Revenge. And it's what makes the movie so romantic. Tony was able to combat me very passionately on his own points and said, Quentin, I'm not doing it to make it a Hollywood movie. I'm doing it to try and turn it into something it's not. I want to do it. It's not for commercial reasons. I want to do it because I love these two kids and I want to see them get away. I wanted to be tough, but I don't know what it is about Tony Scott, but I'm a complete pussycat in his hands. And could probably talk me into doing anything. Now I gotta say, I think Tony's ending is better for the movie Tony made. So he wanted to change it, but Tony gave him a very compelling reason why he couldn't change it. It's because he loved the characters so much.
Fell in love with those two characters, for sure.
And you had to give Tarantino props for that.
Yeah.
He made him love those characters.
Yep.
So yeah, that's all I have on the rest of the spoilers.
Yeah, that's all from me too.
This was a fun one.
That was a fun one. I really enjoyed learning about this one, talking about this one. It was a good experience. Not that other films weren't, but this one just had so much
interesting. I mean, the director was interesting, the writer's interesting, all of the actors are interesting, the story is interesting, how it all came together is, I mean, just really.
Like I said, I could go back and just do the whole episode just about stuff about this movie rather than the actors, the acclaim, and all that. It would have been easy to make an episode just based on that.
Yeah.
But we did promise some reservation time to the people that want to watch Street Fighter, Leia. So
94.
So I'm
actually surprised that there's people waiting out here.
I know.
I didn't think there would be.
I feel like maybe they're all related.
Or maybe they think the 74 version is supposed to be.
That's probably it.
Did we
put 74 out on the outside or 94?
You did it. I don't know.
Crap. All right. Well, I'm going to have some apologies to make.
You are.
Speaking of apologies, I'm sorry for having to close up shop on everybody, but the theater was reserved.
It was.
Can't do anything about that. So a commitment is a commitment if this movie taught us anything at all.
So
right?
Now you actually have to get out. And we got to be mean about it.
That's right. We don't want to be mean, but we will. So yeah, we got to let everybody go. Thanks again for joining us, everybody. We truly, truly, truly appreciate all your time and attention. But don't stop now. Go ahead and keep talking with us, interacting with us. Check us out on themovietheaterlobby.com.
We really enjoy interacting with you guys. It's so fun.
We're getting a lot of interaction on Blue Sky at the Movie Lobby. We're also on Instagram and Facebook, though admittedly we spend less time there. The Movie Lobby on Instagram, the Movie Theater Lobby on Facebook. If you need to get a hold of us, please do. Please send us DMs on socials are kind of tough. If you got a lot to say, please do so through email. Contact us at themovietheaterlobby@gmail.com. If you got anything to say, like an anecdote you want to tell us about a movie you love,
suggestions for movies for us to do.
If we said something incorrect you need to correct us,
please do.
Go ahead and do that.
We won't
too.
be offended, I swear.
If you can give us some constructive criticism too, that's cool. Just don't be a dick.
Yeah,
we don't need that.
We're sensitive.
Yeah, we are. Also, if you really get desperate and you need someone else to follow you on Blue Sky, find me, Brandon, on Blue Sky at BrandMC. Leia, where can folks find you if they want to find you?
You can find me, Leia McClevey, at LM Nerd Room on all of the previous mentioned socials.
Yeah, you make that so easy.
I know. Even Blue Sky. That's amazing. And at lmnerdroom@gmail.com.
There we go. Thank you once again, everyone, for being here with us.
Hey, I gotta go. I gotta get the concessions going. Yeah. I gotta get the popcorn going.
Yeah, and I gotta go change that 74 into or 74 into a 94.
Yeah, and you gotta get all of the promotional stuff ready. We got a lot to do in the next 10 minutes.
Well, our Street Fighter fates are sealed.
We gotta go.
Thank you, Leia.
Thank you, Brandon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's just after I see a movie, I like to go get a piece of pie and talk about it. It's sort of a little tradition I have. Do you like to get pie after you see a good movie?
Yeah, I love to get pie after a movie.
Would you like to go get some pie with me?
I love some pie.